Today we're going to be starting a new series, and it's entitled Discover. And as we saw this morning, it's all of us going to be discovering what this is going to look like as Zion Evangelical moves into the future. This church has a wonderful history and a long history. And it's, this year is the 150th year. We're celebrating the 150th in just a month. And it's an exciting time for us. It's an exciting time for me. But what this is going to look like, none of us exactly know 100%. And that can be scary. That can be a little bit unnerving. But we're not alone in the fact that one of the biggest things that we see in this church right now is it's a multi-generational church. And that there's young families, and that there's older families. There's families that have been here their whole lives. And that there's newer families. And what's difficult about this is happening all over America. It's not just here. My job in getting ready to go to Romania, it's my job to travel around and visit churches, speak at churches, and there's tons of churches that are in the place that we're in right now. And what I've seen over the years is usually churches do one of three things when they get to this point. The first one is they call in a new pastor, a younger pastor, and he comes in and says, we're going to be culturally relevant. He changes a lot immediately. And one by one, the older people begin to leave. Because it no longer feels like their church. I was a part of one of these churches in Pennsylvania when I was an intern. And I remember going through this and feeling the sadness of one after another of my older friends left. And I remember promising myself, I never want to be in a place of leadership and see that happen. And I never want to make decisions that lead to this. But this church began to grow and the younger people began to come in. But it was still saddening because the older, the wiser generation began to leave. The second thing churches do is they never change. And the older people will hold on to the way things have always been. And these churches begin to slowly, one by one, lose their members because no new people are coming. And neither of those are good options. And the third option, what many churches do, is they'll begin to split up their services. We'll have an older service, a more traditional one, and we'll have a newer, contemporary one. And that's also not the best option. Because it begins to have two different churches that kind of reside, and you kind of miss people in the hallways, and one will leave before the other. And I don't want any of those. But what does that mean? I don't know. And that's why this is a discovery process for all of us. Because none of us know exactly what it means to have a multi-generational church that can love each other and build each other up in unity. And all of us are going to have to discover that together. And we're all going to have to make sacrifices, and we're all going to have to do things that aren't exactly the way we want to do them, so that we can all be one church and one body. An example of this is when I came to preach my candidating message. JJ and I were communicating through text, and he texted me after I told him my sermon and the song. He said, well, what's your call to worship? And I said, what? He's like, you know your call to worship, and he explained it, and I texted back, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I thought I grew up in a traditional church. That's just the generation difference. That there's things that are done here that my generation has never experienced before. And when I came, I was like, this is a little uncomfortable. But as you can see, we did it today. Even though it makes me uncomfortable, I don't understand it as much. Because I, like everyone here, is going to have to make sacrifices so that we can all be one body, we can all be one family. Will we do things like this in the traditional aspect every single week? Probably not. But we are all going to make sacrifices, and we're all going to do whatever we can to come together in this. And when I do something you don't like, or something you don't just disagree with, please come to me. Please come to one of the elders. If everyone has their own conversations about what the church does or doesn't do, that will just breed disunity, and we will never be a church unified. And we will never see what we want to see happen. So as things begin to change or don't change, please come talk to us. Don't just talk amongst yourselves about all these things. So today, as we start out, the first week we're going to be doing it's called Discover God. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at a passage in the Pew Bible. It is on page 410. It's 1 Chronicles chapter 13. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be coming to this passage, we're going to be reading it, and we're going to be explaining it, and then we're going to be asking one question. From this passage, what can we discover about God? And that's a mindset we're going to begin to take more and more. As we look at the Word of God, what can it teach us about God? Not, oh, that's an interesting story, or I don't like that, but what can I learn about God? So I'm going to read this. It's 1 Chronicles chapter 13, and it's on page 411. David conferred with each of his officers, and the commanders of thousands, and the commanders of hundreds. And then he said to the whole assembly of Israel, if it seems good to you, and if it is the will of God, the Lord our God, let us send word far and wide to the rest of our people throughout the territories of Israel, and also to the priests and the Levites who are with them in their towns and pasture lands, to come to us and join us. Let us bring the ark of our God back to us, for we did not inquire of it during the reign of Saul. The whole assembly agreed to do this because it seemed right to the people. So David assembled all Israel from the Sihor River in Egypt to Lebo-Hamath to bring the ark of God from Kiriath-Jearim. David and all of Israel went to Baalah, Judah, Kiriath-Jearim, to bring up from there the ark of God, the Lord, who is enthroned between the cherubim, the ark that is called by the name. They moved the ark of God from Abinadab's house on a new cart, with Uzzah and Ehud guiding it. David and all the Israelites were celebrating with all their might before God, with songs, and with harps, and lyres, and timbrels, and cymbals, and trumpets. When they came to the threshing floor of Hinnom, Uzzah reached out his hand to steady the ark because the oxen stumbled. The Lord's anger burned against Uzzah, and he struck him down because he had put his hand on the ark. So he died there before God. Then David was angry because the Lord's wrath had broken out against Uzzah. And to this day, the place is called Perez Uzzah. David was afraid of God that day and asked, how can I ever bring the ark of God to me? He did not take the ark to be with him in the city of David. Instead, he took it to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. The ark of God remained at the house of Obed-Edom in his house for 3 months, and the Lord blessed his house and everything he had. So, crystal clear, isn't it? Everyone knows exactly what's going on and the significance of all these things? Of course not. It's basically impossible to open up the middle of the book and read a passage and everyone goes, oh yeah, I remember all of the details. So as we do this, we're going to begin to go back, and I'm going to kind of explain where we are in the story of the Bible. Because the Bible is one big story, and all of them will have little stories. So as we go back, David just became king of Israel. And we have a map up here. And the map, not that I want to insult your intelligence that you don't know where Israel is, because I believe you do. I just want us to get in the mindset of thinking, this is a real place, this really happened. And this is the country it happened in. And this country had a new leader, and this new leader was David. What David was doing as he took office was he was bringing everyone together. Let's say Missouri was its own country. It's like people from the north come down, people from the south come out. Let's meet in Jeff City, let's have a big party. And that's what he's doing, is he's bringing everyone together. And one of the things they're doing is they're getting the Ark of the Covenant. And they talked about it amongst themselves, and they thought it was a good idea. But we see later in this chapter, they never actually asked God if it was a good idea, or how he wanted to do it. They thought it was a good idea. So they brought the Ark, started bringing the Ark of the Covenant. On this picture, this is what the Ark of the Covenant is. It was a wooden box completely overlaid with gold. And it had special objects in it. Like one of them was the stone Ten Commandments. When Israel came out of Egypt, they crossed the Red Sea and they went into the wilderness. And God began to tell them to make certain things. So one of them was the tabernacle, which was like a tent, which was basically their traveling temple. We would call a temple today a church. But it's traveling. And this, even from the passage, one of the passages says, God was enthroned between the cherubim. If you see up at top, there's these two angel beings, and they have their wings like this. And the picture of this is this magnificent picture of these holy angel-type beings that are without sin, because of who God is. That this is set apart because of who God is. And God is holy, and this is his throne. This is what it represented to the people of Israel. That it says, and I put in your bulletin some passages, because I know lots of people like to look things up later. That God says, I will speak to you from between the cherubim. That's where I'm going to meet you, and that's where I'm going to speak to you from. So if you were to think of God having a kingdom here on earth, this is how they think of it. They think of this as God's throne. And that's what it represents to the people of Israel. And as the Israelites move into their history, and they move, the first thing they do is God commands them, saying, the priests are to go ahead with this, far out in front of everyone else. Whenever we move, the priests go out, and they carry it, and everyone stands about a half mile back, and they follow the ark, because it represents following God. And God says, we're making certain laws about this so that you know that this is holy, that it's set apart for God's work. And one of them was, there's only one family that's allowed to carry it. And there's only one family so that they know what they're doing. To make sure that no one who comes irreverently to do something with the ark. There's only one family. And the other thing is there's two hooks on it. And the two hooks means that you can put a pole through it, so you can carry it with a pole. And that way it says no one can touch it. And if you touch it, you will die. So that is the beginning of the ark going out. And what's so cool about the Ark of the Covenant is, as the Israelites do this, as they begin to go through the wilderness and as they head into the Promised Land, they go across the Jordan River. And the Jordan River, the people who are carrying it, when they step into the Jordan River parts. And they're able to go through the Jordan River on dry land. And next they go to Jericho. And at Jericho, remember, they walk around the city 7 times. And the walls crumble down. What's out in front? What's out in front is the Ark of the Covenant. Because it represents God leading his people. Because it represents the throne of God. Well, after the Israelites had been in their nation for a while, they were beginning to be attacked by their enemies. And they remembered the Ark. And they remembered it. They felt like it led them. The reality is God led them. But they said, the Ark, it led us out of the wilderness. It led us into the Promised Land. It did this. You know what we should do? We should take it down to the battlefield because it's going to give us victory. And once again, they didn't confer with God. They just talked amongst themselves. They thought, this was a good idea. Let's do this. So they took the Ark of the Covenant down to the battlefield. Like, woo, we're going to get victory now. And the enemies stole it. And what happens next in the story, it's exciting because it means God has a sense of humor. Where these enemies, the Philistines, they took it into their own temple and put it by their statue of Dagon, their god. And like, wow, now we have 2 gods. And they leave and they come back the next morning and their stone god is bowed down before the Ark of the Covenant. Like, oh, we better put this up before anybody sees this. So they put it back up. The next day, they come back. It's bowed down again, and now its head and its hands are cut off. And this is a picture of false gods, even stones, will worship the true God. And they said, well, we got to get this out of here. And it's a long story. I can't go into everything. But they send the ark away, and they send it back to Israel. And that was during the time, we saw from the passage, when Saul was king. So when it came back into Israel, it just stayed in the town the first one had arrived in. And no one ever brought it back from there. So this is where David becomes king. And he says, let's all get together and let's go get the ark. But they did not consult the Lord. So they go down and get the ark. And I want you to picture this. The Ark of the Covenant now is getting to be prepared to be taken back to Jerusalem, to their capital city. And And what happens is they go, do you know what we should do? We should build a new cart. We should build a float. We should put signs on the side of it that says, come see the ark. And that's what they did. Even though God commanded them that they were only supposed to carry it with the hooks and the poles, they disobeyed God. So here they are now taking the ark on this new cart. And there's a couple people who are leading the cart. And everyone, as they're worshiping God, they're running around with instruments, playing instruments. They're singing praise songs, they're dancing, they're excited. And then the cart and the oxen start to go up a little hill. Maybe it rained the night before, and it's a little bit muddy. And the cart just jolts a little bit. And the ark begins to slide. And Uzzah, in a frantic, what you do moment, reaches out and grabs it and steadies it so it won't fall into the ground or won't slip into the mud. And he's struck dead like that. He just falls over dead. And all the praise, all the singing, all the instrument playing stops. And it's quiet. And it says that David was angry. He was just, God, what have you just done? We were worshiping you. We were praising you. We were bringing the ark back up to the temple. Like, what have you just done? And then it says after he got angry, he became fearful. Because he realized the magnitude of this. How God viewed this was so serious that he just struck someone dead immediately. And when he became fearful, he looked around. He's like, what am I going to do? There's a house over there. Put it in there. We'll deal with this later. I don't even know what to do. Just put it in there. So even after now we've got the background of the story, and we can see the story a little bit more clear, is it any easier to accept and be excited about this story? Or is it hard? Is it hard for us to look at this picture of what God did and go, yeah, I understand. That makes complete sense. Because it's so different from the God we're used to so often. But what really happened here? Let's take, for example, Uzzah. What did he do? He put the ark on a cart. Either he was, there's only one family that's allowed to carry it. Either he was from that family, and he knew and he disobeyed. Or he wasn't from that family, and David disobeyed because David was the one who chose him to do it. But either way, the cart is there and is built because of disobedience. And then there's another law. Do not touch it. What did Uzzah do? He touched it. So we see two steps here of disobedience. They disobeyed God, and it put them in a position where they felt like they had to disobey God again. But it's just disobedience after disobedience. And what was the reality of it is, why did he touch it? Because he was afraid it was going to fall in the mud. He was afraid that mud was going to defile the ark. But let me ask you a question. What is defiling to God? What does God not like to the point where he would call it defilement? Sin. Disobedience. Does mud disobey God? No. It does what it's supposed to do. It's dirt, it gets wet, it turns to mud. Boom. But man, on the other hand, man has the audacity to disobey God by touching it and think that he's doing God a favor. Say, I'm going to disobey you, God, but I'm really helping you. I pictured this yesterday. I was weeding some of the garden in front of the house, and my son was like, can I help you, Daddy? He's like, sure, do this. He goes, okay. And he starts doing the exact opposite. Like, what are you doing? I'm helping. Well, why didn't you do what I asked you to do? Because I'm helping, and this is better. He's like, no, it's not better. He's like, he keeps doing it. Like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm helping. He's like, hang on. It's never a help to me when you disobey me. It's never a help to me. It's disobedience. And it's always a hindrance. And that's what Uzzah did here. Is Uzzah disobeyed God, and he was punished for it. And he received that punishment immediately. This story for us is in our culture today, a lot of our churches want to focus just on forgiveness, grace, patience, and these attributes of God. And when we see a story of God in the Old Testament or anywhere in the Bible that doesn't line up with our understanding of forgiveness and grace, it's offensive almost. And we don't know what to do with it, so we don't talk about it. And that's why we're going to come to this story and just ask, what can this story teach us about God? What can we discover about God from this passage? And there's two things I'm going to pull out today. The first one is God is just. God punishes sin. Simply put, God is morally right. He always behaves in the correct manner. And he has to, because it's his character and he can never change. It's who he is. An example of this would be, let's say there's a law that says, if you steal a car, you're going to jail for 10 years. And someone stole the car. You can imagine them walking into the courtroom to hear their sentencing, and you have a righteous, just judge up here with his robe, and his gavel. And the man walks in for sentencing, and he gets ready to open his mouth for his defense, and the judge just says, there's a law. You broke it. The punishment for that crime is 10 years in jail. You're going to jail for 10 years. He's saying, because I'm just, I have to administer justice. And the man begins to defend himself, and the judge goes, there's literally nothing I can do. If I didn't administer justice to you, if I didn't uphold the law, then I wouldn't be just anymore. That's the definition of just, is you uphold justice. You're morally right. You don't give in. And this is who God is. God is a just God. Sin is a very big deal to God. And we see this from the story of Uzzah. God punishes sin. And the second thing we see from this passage is God is holy, which means he's perfect. He's set apart from sin. In him there is no sin at all. In him is perfection. So what happens when we see holiness and God's justice come together? We see a passage like this of Uzzah, where God's holy justice is poured out in a moment, and disobedience is punished. It's not an easy thing for us to see this, because it's hard. None of us want to be judged. So often we'll focus on the loving side of God, the gracious side of God, the forgiving side of God, and we'll only hold on to that to the point when we read a story like this, it's almost as if it's foreign to us. We go, well, that's the Old Testament God. We have Jesus. I don't know what to do with this. But we have to ask ourselves, what does this mean for us? What does this mean for us today? It means we need to take our understanding of grace, our understanding of forgiveness, our understanding of love, and put it together with holiness and justice. Because it's one God. And although we might not completely understand him, we can worship him in this way. Because when we do this, it's such a beautiful picture of who God is. The gospel is so much more significant to us when we understand holiness and justice. Because if it's just forgiveness, if it's just love, if it's just grace, without holiness and justice, then we have a picture of God who doesn't care about sin. Oh, it's not that big a deal. Oh, yeah, I did this. And people make jokes about sin. We laugh about it. I did that. But when we have this picture coming together of who God really is, it's beautiful. And it makes the gospel so much more significant. And as we begin to close today, this is what I want you to think of, is think of like Adam and Eve. What did God tell them? God told them, if you disobey me, you will die. If you disobey me, you will die. If you eat from the fruit, what did they do? They ate from it. And God was gracious in that he did not kill them immediately, but he gave them a chance to repent. And all of us are in that same boat where none of us can say we haven't sinned at least once. Most of us are probably a lot closer to the 5 to 10 million sin category, but at least once, all of us have. And that the punishment for sin was death. God established it. And God is the righteous judge who always punishes sin. He has to, because it's who he is. So imagine that same courtroom, and this is the last thing we're close with, this courtroom where someone's walking in and it's a defendant who's guilty of a crime, just like the man who stole a car and received 10 years in jail. But it's us. And we sinned once, or ever how many times, and we're now walking before the righteous judge who has to administer justice. Otherwise, he wouldn't be who he is. And as we come up with nothing to defend ourselves, the righteous judge here, who has to punish the sin, lays down his gavel, takes off his dignified righteous robe, and walks down to where we are, and puts his hand on our back and says, I have to punish your sin, but I'm going to die in your place. Your sin has to be punished, and I have to punish it, but I'm going to take it. Isn't that so much more beautiful than a God who doesn't care about sin? Who thinks, oh, it's not that big a deal. When we get this picture of a righteous judge who has to punish sin, who's willing to take that punishment himself, it changes things. It changes who God is to us. And as we close with this last song, it's going to be new for most of you. So I don't want you to feel like you have to try to sing along. I just want you to look at the words and let them sink in. It's about a person who came to this point, who saw holiness for the first time and realized, I have never truly understood God like that.